It's dangerous to the fucking economy long term, but then again, capitalism never really thought in the long terms.
What the hell did you just say?
Unlike these more freedom people who are all, your health's your responsibility, fuck you, you dangerous fucking killer. You dangerous killers that don't understand viral infection and are happy to make things worse with your little protests and your haircuts, greasing the wheels of capitalism with your blood because capitalism works best when it gets ordinary people to vote against their own interests, to march themselves willingly into the meat grinder. GameStop isn't an essential business. GameStop is fucking ghoulish. And the one thing it deserves is the thing it expects all of us to do for it. It deserves to die.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Dear Jim Sterling, shut the fuck up. For real. Shut the fuck up. I am sick and tired of you spreading misinformation and lying to your audience. Okay? I have bit my tongue for so long, but with how many times you bash capitalism, you mislead your audience, and you blame issues of the video game industry on capitalism, I'm getting sick and fucking tired of it. And I'm going to tell you right now, Jim Sterling, if you're going to go around and tell people like me who believe in capitalism, freedom, individuality, and personal responsibility to fuck off, then you are going to get a huge backlash. I will promise you that much. You don't get to get on your fucking soapbox and use this fucking pandemic so you can spread your hate for capitalism and tell entire groups of people to go fuck themselves because you deem them as little more than evil. You deem them as killers. It's absolutely disgusting, Jim Sterling. Like, misleading people on capitalism is one thing. I'm used to it by this point because of the education system being fucking trash and people constantly lying about capitalism. However, for you to go around and describe people as killers for wanting to reopen their businesses to try to keep the economy going because they are concerned about the economy is fucking disgusting, Jim Sterling. Your entire video is borderline slander, that you are calling these people killers. And I am going to explain to you, Jim Sterling, something that should have been explained to you a long time ago. The fact that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, Jim Sterling. You don't know what the fuck capitalism is. And I am going to debunk you once and for all. If it's a fight you want, oh, I'll give you a fight. Now, the first thing I want to get out of the way is, what is capitalism? Now, I'm sure it probably seems annoying that I have to go over something so basic, but with all the misinformation and lies out there about capitalism, especially in regards to Jim Sterling's understanding of capitalism, this is a highly necessary thing. So before we even begin, Jim Sterling, I'm going to explain to you exactly what capitalism is, and I hope you listen well.
Now, no one disputes that all economic systems reflect the intrinsic self-concern of human beings. But only capitalism creates a group of people known as entrepreneurs who have no choice but to concern themselves with the needs and desires of others. These others are their customers. Few economists, however, actually study the behavior of these entrepreneurs, the creative leaders of capitalist businesses. If they did, they would discover that entrepreneurs, by the very nature of what they do, must shun greed. First and foremost, responding to others is the very opposite of greed. Second, greed in the economic sphere is normally expressed as the immediate consumption of goods and services. I grab what I can without regard for others. But entrepreneurs must begin by saving, which is defined as foregoing consumption to achieve long-term goals. Often it takes months, sometimes many years, to bring a new product or service to market. Furthermore, entrepreneurs must collaborate with others, building teams to achieve their aims. In designing their goods and services, they must, once again, focus not on their own needs, but on the needs of others. This, too, is the opposite of greed. So what entrepreneurs do when they seek profit is far more than self-interest. Rather, profit is a measure of how well a company has served others. Under capitalism, a business prospers only if customers voluntarily trade for its output. And it's only by improving its service to others that a business can thrive and grow. If the entrepreneur pursues his own interests first and his customers' interests second, his business will fail. And sooner or later, an altruistic entrepreneur will surpass him. Capitalism at its essence, then, is a competition of giving. Of course, self-interest is involved, but the genius of capitalism, and only capitalism, is that it channels self-interest into altruism. Entrepreneurs can only help themselves by helping others. All those who have started a business and made great sacrifices to do so know the drama of that first day. Does the world want what I have to give? Whether it's an immigrant opening a beauty salon or Steve Jobs selling an Apple computer, success is far from guaranteed. In fact, it's just the opposite. Those courageous souls, the entrepreneurs who are the beating heart of capitalism, who bring us the endless material benefits we enjoy, from ATM machines to life-saving medicines, should be held up for admiration, not torn down. Altruism is the very reason for capitalism's existence, and why it remains the hope of civilization.
To further elaborate, capitalism is an economic system in which private individuals or businesses own capital goods. The production of goods and services is based on supply and demand in the general market, known as a market economy, rather than through central planning, known as a planned economy or command economy, or in simple terms, not regulated by the government. The purest form of capitalism is free market capitalism. Here, private individuals are unrestrained. They may determine where to invest, what to produce or sell, and at which prices to exchange goods and services. The laissez-faire marketplace operates without checks or controls. Today, most countries practice mixed economies, systems that include some degree of government regulation of business and ownership. An important thing to understand about capitalism is it is inherently a system of market anarchy, meaning that once you have government regulating the market, it ceases to become capitalism. It ceases to be capitalism, because by capitalism's very nature, it cannot function with government intervention. When you get government intervention, government regulation, and so forth, you end up with fucked up systems such as corporatism, which is commonly mistaken for capitalism, which we will go over in a minute. Never confuse capitalism with corporatism. They are not one and the same. Under a true free market, there is no government regulation. There is no government stranglehold over the economy. Anyone can sell a product or service at a price that they so wish. And the market regulates itself, and the consumers also determine who wins and who loses. Unlike today's system where government decides who wins and loses. They will bail out failing corporations that they believe deserves to be around. Whereas under capitalism, the consumer decides by purchasing the products and services of the companies that provide the best service around. And should a company provide a service that is not in demand, then they will naturally go bankrupt as a result of people not buying their products. And I'm going to go more into detail a little bit later as to why government regulation fucks things up so badly, especially in regards to the so-called AAA game industry that you bitch about so much, Jim Sterling. But before we get to that, there's one more important thing we need to go over. Now, this is another important thing I want to discuss, because so many people, especially Jim Sterling, cannot seem to separate capitalism from corporatism. They foolishly believe that capitalism and corporatism is one and the same, and I have even debated with some of Jim Sterling's fans in his comment section, and they believe that capitalism and corporatism are the same thing as well, and I've always had to explain that they are not. To say that capitalism and corporatism are the same thing is intellectually dishonest. It's as absurd as saying Republicans and Democrats are the same thing. They aren't. And I want to go over the differences between capitalism and corporatism, because these two concepts are antithetical to one another. But all too often, people like to say that they are the same thing. And no, for all you anti-capitalist people, it's not a mono true Scotsman fallacy. There are legitimate differences between capitalism and corporatism. And if you can't tell the difference, then that shows a fundamental lack of understanding of capitalism and corporatism as core concepts, and shows that you lack the ability to do any kind of honest research. So, let's go over the differences between capitalism and corporatism. Capitalism is a social and economic system which recognizes individual rights, including the right to own properties and the possession of goods for the individual's personal consumption. Corporatism, on the other hand, is a form of economy that was created as an option to socialism and intends to achieve social justice and equality without the need to take away private property from individual members of society. It stresses the positive role that government has in assuring social justice, while restraining social unrest, as people look after their self-interests. The key player in a capitalist economy is the individual, or a group of individuals. They are given equal opportunity in competing as buyers or sellers of property or goods. In a free market without the intervention of the government, exempt for rules and regulations, that maintain a level playing field. The trading of goods and services are independent actions of the individuals. There is no room for aggression in a capitalist society. The heart of a corporatist economy, on the other hand, is the political community that must reach its full potential to enable individuals of society to attain self-fulfillment and happiness. And those are things that must be taken into account when understanding the differences between corporatism and capitalism. Corporatism is a product of collectivism. Capitalism, on the other hand, is all about individualism and freedom. Once again, these two concepts are antithetical to one another, and these are things you must take note of. In order for corporatism to function, it needs the state to regulate the market. It needs the state to regulate corporations. Capitalism, on the other hand, it can't function if you have the government regulating the market. Once you have government regulation, you cease to have capitalism and it becomes corporatism. These are the things that people fail to take into account. Now, let's continue. Capitalism allows individuals unlimited opportunities in creating wealth for themselves and own as much properties and goods as they can afford to buy. This results in inequality that can eventually motivate individuals to work for more wealth, to catch up with other individuals. Individuals are, however, to respect the rights of other individuals and avoid coercion. All forms of aggression against another individual are considered illegal. A simple example of this is the non-aggression principle. The non-aggression principle is a core concept of capitalism, or more importantly, anarcho-capitalist philosophy. And that's something to take into account. Now, people often like to say that income inequality is awful, and since capitalism creates income inequality, it is therefore evil because there is no equality of outcome. However, there is equality of opportunity. Yes, there will always be those that will be more successful and more rich than you. However, under such systems such as socialism or corporatism, it doesn't make this better. Because we see things like minimum wage laws that make things worse for the middle and working class, not better. Under capitalism, you can work for whatever wage you desire. You could sell your product for whatever wage you desire. There are no regulations telling you what you can and can't do. And people often like to say that, well, without government, companies and corporations would just take over, not taking into account that under the very nature of capitalism, any form of coercion or aggression would still be illegal. In comparison, corporatism is a collectivist society. Just like socialism, corporatism, however, only nationalizes private property, in fact, and not by operation of law. It blends capitalism and socialism in a governing society. And the economy, as such, it allows private business to operate within tolerable limits while prioritizing and promoting major projects of the state. The government justifies the creation of public ventures, claiming that there are no takers of certain projects that are essential to the people from the private sector, because the projects are huge and require a huge amount of investment that the businessmen cannot afford. In terms of labor issues, capitalism resolves labor questions through collective bargaining, where representatives of management and the labor union sit down together to reach an agreement on the issue. Corporatism, on the other hand, organizes labor and management into major interest groups or corporations to negotiate problems, including labor issues, through their representatives. Now, this is something that we must understand. When people like Jim Sterling go around falsely blaming the issues of corporatism and government on capitalism, it is extremely intellectually dishonest and shows a fundamental lack of understanding of capitalism and corporatism. And this is something we must get out of the way in order to take down Jim Sterling's arguments, because he has a fundamental lack of understanding of these two concepts. Once again, we take note, and even Jim Sterling has noted the fact that large corporations that he speaks out against, such as Activision and EA, they are in bed with the government. The government and the corporations work together. They are one entity. That is the nature of corporatism. They use government regulations to strangle out competition, which is why you are not able to achieve true capitalism in a corporatist system. It can't work. Under capitalism, a huge aspect of capitalism is competition. Competition thrives innovation. It is competition that keeps other companies in check, not regulation. Now, Jim Sterling, I have watched a lot of your videos, and I have seen all your little anti-capitalist rants, and they are all bullshit. Almost every problem that you bitch about in regards to the real world, the AAA game industry, etc., is rarely the fault of capitalism. It is usually always the fault of the government and corporatism. But of course, you don't take that into account because for some reason, you can't make certain connections. For example, you complain about exclusivity. You say that the Epic Store is trying to use exclusivity to choke out Steam as a competitor. But here's something you fail to take into account. Under a capitalist system, there is no government to regulate the market, thus there are no regulations. That includes copyright regulations, meaning there is no exclusivity. Anyone would be able to sell a game. Anyone would be able to create a service like Steam or the Epic Store, and there would be nothing to stop them from doing so. So you complain about EA, but here's what you fail to understand. If copyright law was abolished and there was no regulation of copyright law, not only would companies like EA not hold exclusive rights over entire IPs and franchises such as Star Wars, for example. A simple example of this is if we were living under a true free market capitalist system, EA would not own the exclusive rights to Star Wars. Any company would be able to make a Star Wars game. Nintendo can make a Star Wars game. Sony can make a Star Wars game. Naughty Dog can make a Star Wars game. Microsoft, anyone would be able to make a Star Wars game because there is no copyright regulation to prevent the competitors from doing so. So here you go again, Jim Sterling. You blame an issue of government and corporatism on capitalism because you're either intellectually dishonest or you genuinely don't seem to understand these simple concepts or can't make these connections. We are over regulated, okay? There are over 80,000 pages of regulation. Think about it, Jim Sterling. You make a chair, and I write 80,000 pages telling you what you can and cannot do with that chair. Do you truly own that chair? The answer is no, you don't. And that is the problem of corporatism. That is the problem of government. The market is overregulated, thus the market is strangled and choked by the government, creating monopolies. You can't have a monopoly without government. It is impossible to maintain a monopoly without government because governments only have the power to create monopolies, and we see this constantly. Not only that, but governments do not hold corporations accountable. You go around thinking that these out-of-touch fucking politicians will regulate the game industry to make it better. Yet we've seen before how that has failed. Look at the ESRB, Jim Sterling. You know for a fact that ESRB is a fucking joke and doesn't work. And companies like EA have leached their way into the ESRB. So that way they could put gambling mechanics in games like FIFA and sell them to people. Something you complain about. Yet you're not able to make the connection there. And it's absolutely fucking enraging that you can't ever figure this out. Whenever the government does something, it always is going to fuck it up. The ESRB is a fucking joke. More regulation is not going to make the game industry better. What will is a freer market. Less regulation, because the more regulations you create, the more larger corporations like EA, the more power they will possess. Corporations lobby governments to rewrite the regulations in your favor because government doesn't give a shit about you. Government is selling your rights to the highest bidder. They have done this for decades, Jim Sterling. And again, you can't seem to figure this out. Or again, you are so blinded by your anti-capitalist rhetoric that you cannot see this. We live under a system of socialism for the rich, Jim Sterling. Government taxes the utter living shit out of the middle and working class, and then they use that money to bail out corporations because government does not hold corporations accountable. Look at Hollywood. Hollywood has been failing pretty epically. Film after film is bombing, and Hollywood is losing money. And right now, Hollywood is begging the government to bail them out. That should tell you something, Jim Sterling. That should tell you that government here is the problem. It is the government that decides which corporations win and lose. That's not how it should be. I know you like to bitch about the term consumer. You get really fucking triggered by that word. But here's the thing, Jim Sterling. The consumers should have all the power in the market, not the government. Under capitalism, the consumers would be the one deciding who wins and loses, Jim Sterling. Us. Voting with your dollar is far more efficient than the current fucked political system that we have now that doesn't even work because government has shown that they will disregard the democratic will of the people if they so wish. So again, Jim Sterling, stop blaming capitalism for issues that is caused by the government and by corporatism. If you truly hate corporatism as much as I do, stop supporting government. The more bigger government becomes, the more regulations you tell parents to fucking advocate for and vote for, the more worse things are going to get. Like the ESRB do not work, and regulating loot boxes will also not work. And the fact, Jim Sterling, that you would tell people, capitalists like me, that support freedom and individuality to fuck off infuriates me to no fucking end. You sit there and you try to say that, oh, these companies, they can't afford to be closed for a little bit. Guess what, Jim Sterling? They can't. I don't know if you heard that story about United Airlines where one person got roughed up by security and then United Airlines stock went down $1 billion overnight. Yes, Jim Sterling, stocks can drop that dramatically over one tiny little instant. For a lot of these companies, especially smaller companies, they can't afford it. And the economy is in real danger, Jim Sterling. And the fact that you would try to imply that the economy is not important, Jim, if the fucking economy collapses, we are all fucked, Jim. Do you not understand that? But no, you have the audacity to get on your fucking high horse and bitch and talk down to us like you're some kind of fucking prophet about how capitalism is evil and companies like GameStop are gonna fucking kill us is fucking pathetic, Jim Sterling. You are fucking pathetic. You make me sick that you would try to use this pandemic to fearmonger and create hysteria just like the mainstream media is absolutely pathetic. Let's get one thing straight, Jim Sterling. The coronavirus pandemic is nowhere near as dangerous as the mainstream media is making it out to be. First off, the coronavirus death rate is absolutely pitiful. Right now, coronavirus kills less people than car accidents, obesity, smoking, alcohol. These things all kill more than the coronavirus, but you won't see the mainstream media talk about this. You won't. Or, Jim Sterling, I'll do you one better. How about the fact that governments all over the world have killed over 200 million people in acts of democide? That is governments killing its own people. And this is not taking into account wars. But you won't see people mention that, will you? No, because it's all about hysteria, Jim. It's all about narrative. And right now, you are no different than people like Bernie Sanders trying to use this coronavirus outbreak to fearmonger people into believing their rhetoric and their bullshit. And that is exactly what you are doing, and it's absolutely disgusting. Your ego needs to be kept in check. You need to bring down that fucking ego, Jim Sterling. And I'm here to bring you back down to the real world with the rest of us. The coronavirus is not as big of a deal as the mainstream media wants it to be. The coronavirus is only deadly if you are above a certain age or suffer from asthma issues. Now, make no mistake, if you are above a certain age and you do suffer from asthma issues, that does put you at risk of dying from the coronavirus. Yes, absolutely. You need to take precautions. And this is the thing, Jim Sterling. Your health is your responsibility. No one else's, Jim. We are individuals. It is not up to mommy government to protect us. It is not up to people like you, Jim Sterling, to tell us what we need to do. No, your health is your responsibility. It falls onto you to take the proper precautions so that you don't get sick. If you go outside, wear a mask. If you come out from being in public, you must constantly wash your hands. Or workplaces must constantly disinfect. It falls onto the individual to be responsible. And to suggest otherwise, Jim Sterling, is some collectivist, Marxist bullshit, Jim. And you don't get to fucking strawman people by saying, oh, but my haircut. Like, are you fucking serious, Jim? And I am so sick and tired of all the hysteria surrounding this coronavirus pandemic. It is ridiculous. Make no mistake about it, Jim. The coronavirus is important to contain, yes. However, Jim, it is also important to keep the economy going as well. Because even if we manage to get rid of the coronavirus, none of that is going to matter if the economy collapses and we possibly go into another recession, or God forbid, we possibly go into another depression. Because right now, things are getting so bad for the government and the economy that they are withholding services like SSI. My grandfather is not getting his SSI because of the coronavirus. Because again, government doesn't give a shit. They're trying to make sure they have a parachute while the rest of us are fucked. But no, you would rather bitch about how companies like WWE and GameStop are evil, which I find kind of ironic that you bitch about how much CEOs make, even though right now a lot of the leaders of these companies and corporations, as you put it, have reduced their income by as much as 50%, but that's not good enough for you, Jim. No, the only thing that'll be good enough is, like you said, you want all these companies to die. Well, guess what, Jim? When you get what you want, and all these companies and corporations die, and the economy goes under, I want you to think about what you said with your borderline slanderous, Marxist-level, psychopathic ramblings. You want to say, fuck people like me, Jim Sterling? Well, like I said, you're going to get one hell of a backlash. And guess what, Jim? I challenge you to a debate. If you see this video, Jim Sterling, and you truly believe in your rhetoric, then debate me. I want you to stand up for what you believe in. You want to die on this hill of fuck capitalism? Well, okay. Here is a supporter of capitalism, an ANCAP right here. If you truly believe in what you're saying, debate me. But if you don't want to, then from my perspective, you are little more than a coward. I look forward to hearing back from you, Jim Sterling. But if you're not going to debate me, then kindly fuck off with your little anti-capitalist rhetoric, because guess what? I'm not buying it, and you are misleading people and your audience, and I'm not going to allow that. You have a huge platform and audience, Jim Sterling. Do not fucking abuse it.